I just drove. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. The text from my daughter Jessica was still glowing on my phone screen. Dad, help. Grandview Trail. Can't walk. That was 40 minutes ago. 40 minutes of my heart hammering against my ribs as I pushed my truck through the winding mountain roads outside Kelowna, British Columbia. When I finally found her SUV, abandoned on the shoulder, driver's door wide open, I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my flashlight and ran into the woods. The beam of light caught her face first. My Jessica, 29 years old, lying in a pile of wet leaves 20 meters off the trail. Her leg was bent at an angle that made my stomach turn. Blood matted her blonde hair, but what stopped my heart wasn't the injuries. It was what she whispered when she saw me. Dad. Daniel's mother. She told me I deserved this. I dropped to my knees beside her, pulling off my jacket to wrap around her shivering body. What are you talking about? Who told you that? Carolyn, she breathed, her voice barely audible over the wind, rustling through the pines. She said, my kind doesn't belong in their family. She said this was God's way of correcting a mistake. My kind. Those two words hit me like a freight train. Jessica's mother, my late wife Miyuki, was Japanese-Canadian. Jessica inherited her mother's beautiful features, her dark eyes, her straight black hair. I'd been so proud when she married Daniel Thornton 3 years ago. The Thorntons were one of those old Vancouver Island families. Wealthy, well-connected, Daniel seemed to adore Jessica. But now, lying here in the October cold, my daughter was telling me something I'd been too blind to see. Can you move? I asked, checking her over quickly. Her left leg was definitely broken, deep gash on her forehead, scratches everywhere. But she was breathing, alert, alive. I don't think so, she whispered, her eyes filled with tears. Dad, the baby. Everything stopped. What baby? I'm 12 weeks pregnant. Her hand moved to her stomach, protective even now. I haven't told Daniel yet. I was going to tell him tonight. But Carolyn, she found out somehow. She called me this afternoon, said she needed to talk to me urgently, asked me to meet her at this trail, said it was about a surprise for Daniel. Jessica's voice cracked. When I got here, she was waiting. She had someone with her, a man. They pushed me, Dad. They pushed me off the trail and drove away in my car. Left me here to die. I'd been a carpenter for 40 years. Built homes, furniture, decks. I'd worked with my hands my whole life because I believed in creating things, not destroying them. But in that moment, holding my broken daughter in the dark woods, I felt something cold and sharp crystallize in my chest. Someone had tried to murder my child and my grandchild. We're going to get you out of here, I said, keeping my voice steady. And then we're going to deal with this. I managed to carry Jessica back to my truck. She's small, like her mother was, barely 5'3", but every step felt like carrying the world. I drove straight to Kelowna General Hospital, breaking every speed limit. The whole way, Jessica kept drifting in and out, mumbling about Carolyn, about Daniel, about how she'd tried so hard to be a good wife. The emergency room staff took her immediately. Broken tibia, fractured wrist, concussion, severe bruising. But the baby, somehow, miraculously, was okay. The ultrasound showed a strong heartbeat. The doctor called it a miracle, said the way Jessica landed must have protected her abdomen. I called it luck. Or maybe Miyuki watching over our daughter from wherever she was now. While Jessica was being treated, I sat in the waiting room and made calls. First to the RCMP detachment, then to my brother Thomas, who lived 2 hours away in Vernon. Thomas and I, we'd grown up in the Okanagan, sons of a logger who taught us that family was everything, and that you never, ever let anyone hurt your blood. I'm on my way, Thomas said, the moment I finished explaining. Don't do anything until I get there. But I wasn't waiting. While Jessica was sedated and resting, I drove to the house she shared with Daniel, a beautiful craftsman-style home in West Kelowna that Daniel's parents had helped them buy. I had a key because I'd built their custom deck last summer. Daniel was at his law firm in Vancouver, wouldn't be home until tomorrow. Perfect. The house was exactly as Jessica kept it. Immaculate, warm, the kind of home that should have been filled with love. I started in the office. Daniel's laptop was there, and Jessica had told me his password once, when I needed to send myself some deck plans. I opened it, not quite sure what I was looking for, just knowing I needed to understand what had been happening to my daughter. What I found made my blood run cold. Email folders. Dozens of them between Daniel and his mother Carolyn, going back 3 years. The subject lines alone told a story. The Jessica problem, correcting the mistake, solutions. I started reading, and with each email, the picture became clearer and more horrifying. 3 years ago, shortly after the engagement, Carolyn had written, "Daniel, I've tried to be supportive, but I must speak plainly. This girl is not suitable for our family. Her blood is mixed. The Thornton name has remained pure for 7 generations. I will not allow you to taint our lineage with Asian ancestry. Break it off now, and I'll buy you that partnership in the firm you've been wanting." Daniel's response: "Mother, I love Jessica. I'm not breaking up with her. Please try to be reasonable." But Carolyn hadn't been reasonable. The emails continued, escalating. She'd hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on Jessica, found nothing because my daughter was perfect. Then she'd tried a different approach. She'd started befriending Jessica, inviting her to lunches, to shopping trips, all while copying Daniel on emails that detailed every flaw she observed. She eats with chopsticks at Japanese restaurants. How embarrassing. She wants to name a future daughter Sakura, after her grandmother. Absolutely not. She mentioned celebrating Obon Festival. We cannot have Buddhist practices contaminating our Christian household. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through 3 years of this poison. But it got worse. 6 months ago, the tone shifted. Carolyn had learned Jessica was trying to get pregnant. The emails became frantic, desperate. "Daniel, you must stop this immediately. If she has a child, that mixed-blood creature will be part of our family forever. The Thornton legacy will be destroyed." And Daniel's response, the one that made me want to put my fist through the screen: "I know, Mother. I'm working on it. I've been replacing her prenatal vitamins with placebos. It's been slowing things down." Replacing her vitamins. My son-in-law had been sabotaging my daughter's efforts to have a baby for 6 months because his mother demanded it. But then, 3 weeks ago, Jessica had switched doctors, gotten new prescriptions, she'd gotten pregnant, and Carolyn had found out. The most recent email was dated today, sent at 2 p.m., 6 hours ago. "It's done. I've arranged everything with Marcus. We'll make it look like an accident on the trail. No one will question a fall. We'll say she went hiking alone and slipped. By the time anyone finds her, it'll be too late. Daniel, you'll be free to find a proper wife. Trust me, this is for the best. The baby would have ruined everything. Marcus." I remembered Jessica mentioning that name. Marcus Hayes, Carolyn's personal assistant. A man in his 30s who'd been with the family for years. The man who'd helped Carolyn push my daughter off a cliff. I took photos of every email. Downloaded the entire email database onto a USB drive. Then I kept searching. In Daniel's desk drawer, I found more evidence. Bank statements showing regular transfers to Marcus. $20,000 over the past month. A burner phone with text messages between Carolyn and Marcus, discussing the plan, picking the location, making sure the trail would be empty on a Thursday afternoon. And then I found something that made everything click into place. A manila folder, hidden at the bottom of the drawer, labeled Mother's Insurance. Inside were medical records. Carolyn Thornton had stage 3 ovarian cancer. She'd been diagnosed 8 months ago, given 12 to 18 months to live. She'd been seeing oncologists in Seattle, keeping it secret from everyone except Daniel. The emails suddenly made horrible sense. Carolyn was dying. She wanted to ensure the Thornton legacy survived her. Wanted to guarantee that Daniel would remarry someone she approved of, someone who would give her pure grandchildren that she'd never meet but could die knowing existed. She'd tried to murder my daughter because she was running out of time. I heard a car in the driveway. My hand went to my phone, ready to call the police. But then I saw it was Thomas's truck. My brother came through the door, took one look at my face, and said, "What did you find?" I showed him everything. We sat at Jessica's kitchen table, the same table I'd helped her pick out at a furniture store in Vancouver, and we read through the evidence. Thomas had always been the hothead, the one who'd gotten into fights defending me when we were kids. I watched his face turn red, then white, then hard as stone. "We call the RCMP right now," he said. "This is attempted murder. Conspiracy. They'll arrest both of them." "We will," I agreed. "But first, we're going to do something else." Thomas looked at me, And I saw the same look he'd had when we were 12 and 15, when a group of older boys had cornered us behind the school, calling us names because our mother was Métis, because we weren't pure enough for their Canada. Thomas had looked at me then and said, "You thinking what I'm thinking? Now?" 35 years later, I nodded. "I'm thinking we make sure they pay. Really pay." Here's what we did. First, we called the RCMP and filed a formal report, provided all the evidence. Detective Sarah Chen at the Kelowna detachment was thorough, professional, and furious on Jessica's behalf. She issued warrants for Carolyn Thornton and Marcus Hayes within hours. But before those warrants were executed, Thomas and I made some calls of our own. You see, the thing about living in British Columbia your whole life, building homes for 40 years, is that you know people, lots of people, and some of those people have connections, platforms, audiences. I called my old friend Robert Chen, a journalist at the Vancouver Sunday, gave him the whole story. Every email, every piece of evidence. This is about racism, attempted murder, and the abuse of wealth and privilege, I told him. This is about what happens when hate is allowed to fester in families. Jessica's mother was Japanese-Canadian. Her grandparents were in the internment camps during World War II. And now, 80 years later, their great-granddaughter is being targeted for the same racism. Robert ran with it. By the next morning, the story was front-page news. Prominent Vancouver Island family accused of attempted murder over racial hatred. The article detailed everything. Carolyn's emails, Daniel's complicity, the attack on the trail, Jessica's pregnancy. Robert had even found other victims, 2 other women who'd dated Thornton family members years ago and experienced similar harassment for not being suitable. The story went viral. Within 24 hours, it was national news. CBC picked it up. CTV ran a special investigation. Social media exploded. The Thornton family name, which Carolyn had been so desperate to keep pure, was now synonymous with racism and violence. Thomas, meanwhile, had made his own calls. He'd contacted a lawyer friend who specialized in civil litigation. "We're suing for everything," the lawyer said, rubbing her hands together. "Attempted murder, assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress, fraud, conspiracy. We'll name Carolyn, Daniel, Marcus, and the family business. By the time we're done, Jessica will own half of Vancouver Island." The RCMP arrested Carolyn Thornton at her Oceanside estate 2 days later. She was sitting on her terrace, overlooking the water, drinking tea like nothing had happened. The news crews were there, had been camped outside since the story broke. The footage of her being led away in handcuffs, her face shocked and indignant, played on every channel. Marcus Hayes tried to run, made it as far as the ferry terminal before police caught him. He sang like a bird the moment they put him in an interrogation room, confirmed everything, provided even more details about how Carolyn had planned it, how she'd promised him $50,000 once Jessica was gone and Daniel was free to remarry. Daniel Thornton was arrested at his law office in Vancouver, charged as an accessory for sabotaging Jessica's prenatal vitamins and failing to report a conspiracy to commit murder. His legal career was over before the handcuffs clicked shut. The Law Society of British Columbia suspended his license pending investigation. The firm dropped his name from the letterhead within hours. The trial was scheduled for 8 months later, but none of them made it that far. Carolyn's cancer accelerated rapidly, likely due to the stress. She died in custody 4 months after her arrest, still insisting she'd done nothing wrong, that she'd been protecting her family. No one mourned her except Daniel, and even he looked relieved when it was over. Marcus Hayes pleaded guilty to attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, and conspiracy. He got 23 years in federal prison, no possibility of parole for 15. At his sentencing, he apologized to Jessica, said he'd been blinded by loyalty to a woman who'd manipulated him for years. Jessica didn't accept the apology. Neither did I. Daniel Thornton tried to fight the charges, claimed he didn't know what his mother was planning, that replacing the vitamins was just a delay tactic. The jury didn't believe him. They convicted him of conspiracy to commit assault and criminal negligence. He got 12 years. His lawyer argued for a lighter sentence because he hadn't physically harmed anyone. The judge, a 60-year-old Indigenous woman named Justice Marie Blackbird, looked at him with cold eyes and said, "You betrayed your wife in the most fundamental way possible. You valued your mother's prejudice over your wife's life. There is no mitigating factor that excuses that." The civil suit was even more devastating. Our lawyer, Maria Santos, was relentless. She proved that the Thornton family business, a real estate development company worth $60 million, had been used to fund Carolyn's activities over the years, including paying off Marcus and hiring private investigators. The judge awarded Jessica $35 million in damages, effectively bankrupting the Thornton business. Daniel's trust fund was seized. The Oceanside estate was sold at auction. Everything Carolyn had killed to protect was scattered to the winds. But here's the thing that mattered most to me. 3 months after the attack, on a cold January morning, Jessica gave birth to a healthy baby girl at Kelowna General Hospital. She named her Miyuki Rose, after her mother and after the wild roses that grow in the Okanagan Hills. I was there in the delivery room, holding Jessica's hand, watching my granddaughter come into the world with a full head of black hair and her grandmother's eyes. Jessica had filed for divorce from Daniel while she was still in the hospital, recovering from her injuries. It was finalized before Miyuki Rose was born. Daniel sent letters from prison, begging for forgiveness, asking to be part of his daughter's life. Jessica burned every one without reading them. She doesn't need a father who valued racism over her existence, Jessica told me. She has you, and Uncle Thomas, and a whole community of people who will love her for exactly who she is. Now, 2 years later, Jessica and Miyuki Rose live in a beautiful house in Summerland, overlooking Okanagan Lake. I built it for them with my own hands, every board and nail placed with love. Thomas lives just down the road. We have Sunday dinners together, the 3 of us and little Miyuki, who's starting to walk now, wobbling around on chubby legs, laughing at everything. Jessica went back to school, got her master's degree in social work. Now, she works with victims of domestic violence and racial discrimination, helping other people escape situations like the one she survived. She speaks at conferences, tells her story, and every time she does, other people find the courage to speak up too. The Thornton name, which Carolyn died trying to preserve, is now used as a cautionary tale. Law schools teach about the case in their ethics classes. Therapists cite it in discussions about family systems and abuse. News articles still reference it when discussing interracial relationships and family acceptance. As for me, I'm 63 now. I still build furniture, but these days I mostly build toys for Miyuki Rose. Wooden blocks, a rocking horse, a little play kitchen. Last week, I started on a dollhouse, 3 stories tall with working windows and a hand-carved staircase. Miyuki watched me work, her dark eyes serious, and she said her first full sentence. Grandpa, make house. Yes, baby girl, Grandpa makes houses. Safe houses, full of love, where everyone is welcome no matter what their blood looks like or where their ancestors came from. I think about Carolyn Thornton sometimes, lying in that hospital bed as cancer ate through her body, knowing she'd failed. She'd tried to eliminate what she saw as impurity from her family line, and instead, she destroyed that line completely. Daniel will never have children, not with a violent crime conviction. The Thornton name ends with him rotting in a prison cell. But my family, the family Carolyn tried to erase, is thriving. Miyuki Rose is growing up strong and healthy, surrounded by love, learning both English and Japanese from the language program Jessica enrolled her in. She'll grow up knowing her great-grandmother survived internment camps, that her grandmother Miyuki died too young but was deeply loved, that her mother fought back against hatred and won. The lesson here, and I want this to be crystal clear for anyone listening to this story, blood doesn't make a family, and it certainly doesn't make someone better or worse than anyone else. The idea of pure bloodlines is nonsense, always has been, always will be. Canada is built on the mixing of cultures, languages, traditions. That's not a weakness. It's our greatest strength. If someone in your family is spreading poison about race, about purity, about who belongs and who doesn't, shut it down immediately. Don't make the mistake of thinking it'll get better with time, or that love will overcome prejudice without action. It won't. Carolyn Thornton's hatred festered for 3 years before it turned into attempted murder. Daniel enabled it by staying silent, and he paid the price for that silence. Stand up. Speak out. Protect the people you love, even if, especially if, it means standing against your own family members. And if you're in a relationship where someone is undermining you, sabotaging you, treating you as less than, get out. Jessica didn't know Daniel was replacing her vitamins, didn't know his mother was planning her murder, but she knew something was wrong. She'd told me, weeks before the attack, that she felt uncomfortable around Carolyn, that something felt off. She should have trusted that instinct, should have left then. Don't make that mistake. Trust your gut. Your life might depend on it. Finally, to anyone out there who's ever been told their blood is dirty, their heritage is wrong, their existence is a problem, you are not the problem. The hatred directed at you is the problem. Your mixed heritage, whatever it is beautiful and valid and deserves to be celebrated. Don't ever let anyone make you feel less than. Miyuki Rose will grow up knowing that her great-grandfather was white, her great-grandmother was Métis, her grandmother was Japanese-Canadian, and her mother is all of those things mixed together. She'll know that this mixture is what makes her special, not what makes her less. And she'll know that when hatred tried to erase her before she was even born, her family fought back and won. That's the legacy that matters. Not some imaginary pure bloodline, but the real, messy, beautiful legacy of love and resistance and survival. I'm sitting on my porch right now, watching the sun set over the lake, watching Jessica push Miyuki on the swing I built last month. The little girl's laughter carries on the wind, pure and joyful, and utterly unaware of the darkness that tried to prevent her existence. Carolyn Thornton wanted to preserve something that never existed. What she destroyed instead was real. Her freedom, her family, her life. What we built in the aftermath is also real, and it's stronger than anything she could have imagined. That's what I learned through all of this. Hatred destroys the person carrying it far more than it destroys the target. And love, real love, the kind that fights back when threatened, that love builds something that lasts. The Thornton name is buried now, forgotten except as a warning. But the name Miyuki Rose, the name that combines Japanese heritage with Western tradition, that name will carry on. She'll grow up, have her own children someday, pass down the story of how her family survived an attack meant to erase them. And maybe, just maybe, she'll grow up in a Canada where stories like ours aren't necessary anymore, where the idea of pure blood is recognized for the dangerous fiction it is, where everyone's existence is celebrated rather than questioned. Until that day comes, though, we'll keep telling this story. We'll keep fighting back against hatred in all its forms. We'll keep building safe houses full of love, because in the end, that's what matters. Not the color of your blood, but the strength of your heart. Not the purity of your lineage, but the depth of your compassion. Not where your ancestors came from, but where you're going and who you're bringing with you. Jessica brought Miyuki Rose into this world, despite everything that tried to stop her. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure that little girl knows she was worth fighting for, worth surviving for, worth everything. That's my story. That's my revenge. Not destruction, but creation. Not hatred answered with hatred, but hatred answered with love so fierce it can't be stopped. And you know what? We won.